frightened yet? You should be. Because on the 8th Byte of October, you are gonna have to learn how to write a little bit of assembly code. We're actually gonna write some custom scripts. Are you ready? Are you ready to dive into some 6502 assembly language scripts? I am. Look, I've got a terrible cold. I'm going to be sniffling and coughing the whole time. I won't make the joke again, I promise, but I'm going to be sniffling and coughing the whole time, and it's going to be driving me batty, and I'm still going to do it. Driving me batty. Anyway, let's jump in. So what we're going to do today is we're going to create a secondary skeleton monster whose head we can jump on, and we can turn him into a little skull. He'll come back up, kind of like a dry bones from Mario 3. And there's a couple different ways that we could do it. We could actually use multiple action steps in a skelly type character, in one of our skeleton characters. We could do that, and then like in that action step, we could do a whole bunch of checks and whatever. We're not even do that. I think we're going to make a whole nother object that it's going to turn into, and then it's going to respawn a skeleton. That way we can make it interact in a very different way pretty easily between those two objects. There's no one way to do this. There's actually many ways to do this. We're going to pick one and go with it that I think you guys can utilize to do a lot of other cool stuff. So the first thing is we just got to create our graphic, right? So we're going to go to pixel editor. And I'm going to take this skeleton. In fact, I'm going to take the one that isn't obstructed by arms. I'm going to get my region selection tool here, not one that actually selects a grid, but copy that. And then I'm going to paste it like over here, too high. I'm not using shift. I'm just control V to paste. That way I can put it lower, and I need to blacken out its eyes. And that way, maybe I could even make it like look sleepier somehow. Like I could do this kind of thing. Like maybe I think it's looking down, like it's, yeah, something like that. Like that'll sell that, I've heard it. I could crack its skull if I wanted. Oh, and do I want to ever? No, I'm going to save that. Now I've got this other object that I'm going to use. This is going to be the skull. What's fun about this skull too is we could just have skulls around the room and then also have them turn into these skeletons after a certain amount of time. That's kind of fun. I might want to shake them or have their eyes open first or do weird stuff. I don't know. We'll get to that. That's details. I want to talk about code today. So save this up. We've got a little skeleton guy. And then we're going to make a secondary skeleton, and it's going to be, I'm going to right click on Skelly and I'm going to say duplicate. And you can see I've got a duplicate of him down here. I'm going to call this Skelly 2. Let's spell it TOO because that's the clever thing. This is also a Skelly. All right. Doesn't matter what you call it. Making a joke. Bad dad joke. All right. So Skelly 2, what this guy's going to do is we want to jump on the skeleton and it's going to turn into the bones. And then after a little bit of time, the bones are going to turn back into the skeleton. One of my favorite ways to do this is to use monster action flags, also known, you'll hear me call them vulnerabilities. So where those are located are here. If I go to object info, actions. These are the vulnerabilities that I'm talking about inside the actions tab, right? We've got ignore gravity as one of them that we've already used. And they're not necessarily vulnerabilities. That demonstrates it. Like it's not being used as something that makes them vulnerable. It's just something specific that our code base can look to these bits to see how they're flipped and then react accordingly. For instance, in this case, it skips over. If this is ticked, it checks to see if object vulnerability is ticked right now. And if it is, it'll skip over doing falling. It'll skip the falling stuff. That's what ignore gravity does. We're going to make another one. We'll use flag 7 for it, so it's really easy to use. We're going to make flag 7, basically make it like head vulnerable, head crushable. I don't know, something like that. So in order to do that, so I can remember which one I used, I'm going to come back over to my project settings, go to my labels, and you'll see where it says monster action flags. Flag number 7, I'm going to call this crunchy head. Sure. Soft head, whatever you want to call it. I'm really going to let you know that that's what this thing was. Doesn't really matter what this is called. Obviously, this doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything. It's just a name that now when I come over here, my object details, there it is, crunchy head. And you know what? Skelly 2, I do want your head to be crunchy. So I'm going to click on crunchy head, even though it doesn't do anything at all right now. Let's start to make it do things. And this is going to be a chain to what happens when the player runs into a monster. And we've actually got a script. We could go all the way deep into our object collisions and check to see what happens when a player type object, and then what I mean by a player type object runs into a monster type object. We could do that. But we already have that pointing to a script, and it's going to be a little bit easier to find and make modifications to. And there's going to be a surprise when we get there. There's already a commented out script that can make our heads bouncy. I could make us bounce off the monster's head, more like Mario. Like I could actually defeat him by jumping on his head. We're going to use that as a base. So if I scroll down, I can find handle player hurt, and you can see I've got it. It's called arcade platform base. My strong suggestion is that we go to File, Save As. We call this underscore my edit or something. Halloween edit, whatever. Remember where it is. Game, arcade platformer base, common. That's called hurt player my edit. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go back to my script over here, and I'm going to point this to this new script that I made. Game, common, and I'm sorry, I was wrong. I put it in arcade platformer base, common, and my edit. Now you can see that we can now edit this one all we want, and we're not actually affecting. If we screw this up heinously, we can go back to where it was. This is the part I was talking about. Look at the first bunch of script that's commented out right now, all the way down to skip hurt. This stuff checks to see if the monster. Right now, what happens is, first of all, it checks to see if we're like in between screens, or in the middle of a teleport or something like that. If we are, it won't do that. It'll skip past hurt. It won't allow you to get hurt. But if not, if it's a normal game screen and the player has run into a monster, it's going to do the hurt script. And right now, all it's doing is going right to here, which it's just decreasing my lives. If there's no more lives left, it's 0. Otherwise, if there is lives left, it's transporting it to the point of the last checkpoint that you did. So that's what this script is doing. And what we're going to do is we need some caveats in here. The first thing that we can do is we can just completely select all this, right click, and uncomment that, or just go ahead and erase each of the semicolons before it if you're not on a Notepad++. Just save that. Now all monsters will observe this. All monsters will observe that if you jump on their head, what'll happen is it'll look at this is all happening in the player's object. It'll check the other object that you're running into, destroy it, and then do a little hop. As long as you were moving in a downward direction. So it's going to check your vertical speed, the player's vertical speed. If it's equal to 0, you're not moving up or down, yeah, you get hurt. If you're moving in a negative direction, yeah, you get hurt. If you're moving in a positive direction, it's going to do this. It's going to destroy the other object. And then it's going to put player back in. It's going to store player into the stack. We talked about this in the other tutorial. Destroy the other, get the other object, put it in X, destroy the object. It can only destroy what's in X. And then it's going to restore our player. So when we're looping, it stays in the same sort of place in the loop. We talked about that with Xavier with the last tutorial. And now that that's back, player's back in X, it's going to do this little hop. It's going to set a negative speed to our player's vertical speed, that's a little hop. So let's test this and just make sure that now when I jump on my monster, it does actually hurt the monster, which means that he'll go away and I'll do a little hop. So now we have this will happen for all my, oh, you know what? All right. I made this monster. I got to go to my monster groups. I got to actually add in Skelly2 and save it. And then I've got to, of course, put that guy on my screen. So I'm going to reset all placements, right click, reset all placements, right click down here, place monster 1, Skelly2, there he is. Now I'll test it. And I got to shake the cobwebs out of my brain. Look, I know you have a bone to pick with me, but going out on a limb for the joke? No? Okay. I don't want to say, and he goes away. I'm going to hit Control T to reset the game. If I walk into him, I die. There we go. Okay, so exactly as expected, the code to work. Looks great. The problem is that now will also happen for other monsters. For instance, if I put a different monster group in here, if I was to put all monsters and reset all placements, and I was to put my jumping pumpkin in here, and I'd have to change the color. I haven't changed the color, but just to demonstrate the problem, this would happen for him too, right? And that's not what I wanted. I only want it to happen with the objects that have that little tick in there. So I'm going to put this back so I make sure I have the right object in here. Day monsters, and right click, reset all placements, and I'll put place monster one, Skelly two. Okay, so back to code. Let's do this. Back to code. I only want this to happen if this other object, the thing I'm running into, the other object, has this picked. Only time that I want to even look at the head popping stuff. So I'm going to close that, come back over here. This is how, right here, I reference the other object and I get information about the other object. So what I'm going to do is right at the top here, even before I do all this, I'm going to copy this stuff right here. This takes what's in Xavier, whatever Xavier's holding, puts it on the stack. Then I can corrupt that Xavier all I want. I can give him whatever information I want. And at the end, I pull off the stack and I put it back into Xavier. So now Xavier is the same going in as he is coming out, and I don't actually corrupt that value. I'm going to do the same thing. We're just going to copy this whole thing and put it up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm not trying to destroy the object here. So I'm going to erase that. What I do want to do is I want to load object vulnerability, comma X. And I'm going to store that into temp A. I'm just going to store that in temp A. So now I've got this in the temp A, and X is back where it belongs. And now I could read temp A. Load temp A. What I'm really reading is the vulnerability, which is what's checking those bits. And how this works is over here. If I look at these, this is the highest bit. This is the bit all the way to the left. This is the lowest bit. This is the bit all the way to the right. So this is all the way to the right or all the way to the left. One digit over, one digit over, one digit over. So if I write this, I'm looking at this. I'm looking for this particular bit. We talk about how and works in logic if you forgot your middle school, maybe young high school math. Yes, I think we should. So don't write this part down. I'm just going to show you how and works. We're trying to explain it the best I can. So we are doing a logical and. What that means is if I have a number, I'll just give you a number 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. By the way, in hex, guess what that equals? 0. Okay? Doesn't matter. This is binary for 0. Sorry, not hex. In hex, it would equal 0, 0. In decimal, it would equal 0, whatever. So here's the binary value. If I said and 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, what happens is I'm looking, and the only digits that are going to come out the other side as 1 are ones where we see 1 on both of these places. This is going to equal 0. This is going to equal 0. This is going to equal 0. This is going to equal. This is going to equal 0. This is going to equal 0. This is actually going to equal. It's going to equal this number. Okay. Now let's do this. 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. What does this equal? Well, this is going to equal 0 right here because 0 and 0 is 0. 1 and 0 is 0. 0 and 0 is 0. 1 and 0. So we get all the way over here. But 1 and 1 hands together to 1. These are both true. If this is true and this is true, then this is true. If this is true, it is false and false, it's false. If this is true and it's false, ultimately it's false. Yes or no, black or white, on or off. Any way you want to think about it. But the whole goal of this thing is 1 and 1 together are going to and together to make 1. I guess an easy way to think about it is think about electric circuits. If you needed this and this to turn the light switch on, right? Like if these were both circuits that were in the way of turning a light bulb on, the only way it could turn on is if both of them were set to on. If one was on and one was off, the whole circuit ends up being off, right? If one is off and the other one's off, obviously the whole circuit's off. if one is on and the other is on, then that circuit is on. If that makes any sense, I think it makes sense in my brain. But anyway, I have a weird brain. So this is the exact thing that we're doing right now. What we want to do is we're checking to see this vulnerability, which is the referencing this data right here. We're checking to see if this bit is flipped. So, for instance, if this vulnerability was if it I'm sorry, if this ended up equaling 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 sorry. All right. If this is equal to 0 0 0, then this would absolutely be zero. The whole thing would be zero. If this one was off, but everything else was on, it would still be zero because, again, like I was talking about with the circuit, this is not a full circuit because even though one part of it's on, the other part's off, which means the light's never going on, right? This is going to equal zero. Here we've got it flipped. It's the same thing. This is still zero. If I had this would all of a sudden be, it would actually end together to be a non-zero number. It would end together to be right because this would still equal zero, this would equal zero, this zero, this zero, this zero, this zero, but this one and one, oh, that circuit's on. There we go. So that's on number one. All right. So that's what we're checking. We're doing that exact thing right here. And we're checking the vulnerability, which we stored in a temp A. Now we're actually reading temp A right here. And we're seeing, is that seventh bit of this flipped? That's effectively what this is checking. It's saying, okay, is that seventh bit flipped? We're going to say branch if not, branch if equal to zero. If it's equal to zero, that means that this was turned off. And what do we want to do if it was turned off? We don't want to check any of this stuff if it was turned off. We want to skip past all that stuff to right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if it's equal to zero, we're branching if equal to zero to do hurt player. So if this happens to have this turned off, that would mean that this bit was zero. So if I ended this, if that's what this said, because this was turned off, and this, it would be zero. It would end up being a whole zero. So it would end up going to do hurt player. And the only way it would get past it is if that was turned on and this is what I saw. It's turned on and read that. This would not equal to zero. So it wouldn't branch and it would just keep continuing on with the code, which means now it's going to check to see all good stuff, which is the only time it's going to check the head of the monster is if this is clicked. This is some of the thicker stuff that we've done here, right? So this is the code right here that we've added. We've pushed Xavier to the stack. Then so we can corrupt X now. We've loaded X with the other object, the one I'm running into. I'm loading its vulnerability state and storing it in a temp so I can do something with it in a second. Then I'm restoring X, so Xavier. So I'm making sure that my player that was here, even though I corrupted X here, now it's back to where it was at the beginning. It's back to where it was here. Now I'm loading that temp variable that I messed with right here, and I'm checking it. I'm checking the highest bit 7 of that, which is what's telling me whether or not this little flag right here is ticked. All right. And let's see. Okay. Can't get over to my code again. Oh, no. Uh, doing this every day, and I still haven't found a good solution for this. There's things in my way. There we go. Okay. Um, close that. Come back down here. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Okay. So if it's equal to zero, if these and together and equals zero, that means that this wasn't ticked. It jumped all the way past to here. If it was ticked, that means we are going into this. And what I usually like to do is when I have a branch, just so I can see how it works, I like to tab what's inside that branch so that I can really see what's going on. And everything that's tabbed, this is where it goes if it's equal to zero. So if flag 7 is ticked in object flags. There we go. Something like that. Flag 7 is ticked in object flags. That's when we want to check for the head. So I'm going to save that. And let's test this real quick. Right now it is checked. So I should be able to jump on his head. Come on, where'd you go? There it is. Should be able to jump on his head. Yay, and I can. And now I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to go to actions. I'm going to turn it off. And I'm going to run it again. And now I should not be able to jump on his head. Now, if I jump on his head, it should hurt me. Let's see. It does. Okay, so we now have confirmation that we have been able to use these vulnerability bits to do something. I'm going to turn it back on because that's not exactly what I want to have happen. Yes, we're close. I wanted something different to happen when I jump on this skeleton's crunchy head. Let's just make sure that we're all set again. But what I want to do is I want to create that skull, not not just have it hop off the. Sorry, did I not save it? I hit the X instead of the I did. Hit the once you click on this, hit the close button, not the X button, Joe. I'm talking to myself on that time, and that will make sure that it stays locked in. Now, one more time. I know better than that. All right. Now if I jump on his head, we're good. Bam. Okay. Well, we want more things to happen. I mean, it's actually pretty neat. It's pretty close. It almost does feel like one of those dry bones guys. But the thing is, we do want to destroy the object. But what we want to do is we want to create a new object that we don't have existing here. And I have a little bit of a problem in that I don't know exactly what number object this is. To me, right now, it looks like if I were to count objects, this should be 0, 1, 2, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That's what it looks like it should be. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Messmaker right now does something very annoying, and when you add and delete monsters, sometimes it mixes up the order of them. And I don't know the rhyme or reason why it does this. It's obnoxious, but there is a way to find out what object is what. It takes a little bit of counting, but it shouldn't be that hard. We can count to this high. If you go to your game engine data folder, so you go to Nestmaker, you go to game engine data folder, you go into game data. There is a file called monster list. It's a text file. This shows you basically the number of every object. Now, we got to get a little creative. The first 15 will always be correct, and then they will change. So, what we got to do is count to 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, that's funny because I would have thought it would be object 21 that we want to create over here if we wanted to recreate this skeleton. But it's 20, and for some reason, it flipped the IDs of this Skelly2 and this Spidey. That's kind of annoying. I know it's kind of annoying. I don't know how to fix it for you guys, but know that you can always get that information here. So what I'm going to do is, just in case I screw this up again, I'm going to make like if I start deleting objects and adding objects and it messes with this order, rather than having to find everywhere in code that I need to name these monsters or whatever, I know that I'm going to need to reference Skelly 2 somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my script and I'm going to make myself what's called a constant. All right, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to come back to that in a minute because we need to make a new object and it might change. So I'm going to open up my script editor. Top of this, it does not matter where you put a constant. This it has no bearing on anything. So I'm going to call this mon underscore skelly equals, and I'm going to just use the dollar sign. Or I'm sorry, not the dollar sign. I'm going to use the hashtag 20. This lets me know that I'm looking at the decimal number 20. And now I'm going to call it Skelly 2. So mon Skelly 2 is going to equal 20. Now I just have to write, if I ever write hashtag mon Skelly 2, it's going to substitute whatever number I have here. Why is that important? Well, if these numbers get mixed up again, I don't have to find everywhere I've written what value Skelly 2 is in code. I just have to remember what its name was. And I just had to change it right here in one place. So if I have to reference it in 27 places, I could just reference it by this constant, and then I only have to change the actual value of it this one time. So I'm gonna guess, and I don't know this is what's gonna happen. Mon null. I'm gonna have it equal 22 because I know that 21 was Spidey for whatever reason. So I'm gonna save that. This might have to change. We're gonna check this out again in a second. Let's make a new object for the skull. I'm gonna go to monsters. And I'm going to get the file down here. Remember, this doesn't control the actual color. I'm just want to let it know that I want to use this sub palette. I'm going to make a 2x2 skull like that. I'm going to go object details, give it a bounding box. Try and stay close to what the Skelly bounding box was. That'd be the best bet. But I'm not going to give it a type. This is not going to be a monster. And this is how I'm going to stop it from hurting me. All right. What I am going to do is eventually I'm going to give it a behavior that's going to recreate the Skelly. So, but for right now, it's good. All I want to do is save this monster, skull. I broke my own rule that I told you guys about creating monsters, but now I've got one called skull. Now I'm going to click on it just in case I want to make any changes. All right. So now if I test my game and let me go back to that monster list. Skelly 2, so 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, still 22. See how I got there? It ends at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I want to create a skull in the position of where my Skelly 2 dies. All right. So I'm going to come back over here to my code. Slow down. Come back over here to my code. And right here, uh, when I destroy my object, before I destroy him, I want to find his position because in order to create an object, okay, if I look at my macros, come over here, find scripts, you can see I've got one called create object. And if I look at these, I need 4 bits of information. I need to know its position, the X, the Y, what object number, and what beginning state it should be in. So what action step it will be showing. So basically I need to find out the X value of the skeleton that I'm defeating, find the Y value of the skeleton I'm defeating, and then put them into those that here and here. And then what object? We just figured out it was 22, but we're going to use the constant here to reference it. And then action step 0 is going to be fine. So that'll start it at the beginning of the object. So I need to know. I'm just going to put this real quick: X, Y, object, just so I remember what those were. I don't have to come back over here and look. So the first thing I need to do is I need to know what is the position of the skeleton that I'm replacing. So I'm going to say load object x, y, comma, x, store it in temp A. Load object y, I, comma, x, store it into temp B. Now let's talk about what that's actually saying. I am taking the X value of whatever object Xavier is holding. And what object is Xavier holding? The other object, the thing that my player just ran into. And then I'm putting it into temp A. Then I'm looking at object Y that Xavier is holding. And that's the object that's in the other. This is where X and Y and X gets really confusing, which is why I like calling this Xavier, because this is an X and X. I'm looking at the X value and the Y value that Xavier is holding. And that's sort of why I'm making a big deal out of this Xavier, Yanni, Aloysius thing. So what I want to do now is I'm going to say, okay, this is the X value where I want to create this thing. Same X value as the monster that's spawning it, the skeleton I'm jumping on. This is the Y value where I want to create this thing. What object? Well, I could write 22, but instead, I'm going to write this mon underscore skull. And I got to start it since it's a constant with a hashtag mon underscore skull. Now, if anything happens and I need to change, if those get all jumbled again, or I delete objects and all I have to do is just change this number, and it'll automatically update here. I don't have to look for every place in the code where I put a static number. It'll change to whatever this is equal to. And then lastly, I want it to create it at frame 0 at that spot. And the only problem with this is that this here now puts it corrupt Xavier again. So if I do this, Xavier is now loaded with this object instead of this object. Well, that's a problem because if I create this object, destroy object is creating what Xavier is holding. So I need to take this and put it after destroy object. So right now, I got the information I needed from the other object. I got the position of it. Now let's get rid of it. Now that it's gone, I'm going to create a new object at its position, and then I'm going to restore X because don't forget, going in it was the player, coming out it's the player. Then I corrupted it to make the other object so I could get information about the other object. Then I destroyed the other object. Now I created a new object, which is the skull, and now I can continue on. My player's still going to hop. If you want your player to hop higher, by the way, change this to B or A or 9 or 0, right? Then I'll make him hop higher. Save that. Let's take a look and see if I successfully create the skull in the position of Skelly 2. Where's my emulator? Sorry. There it is. And I did. Awesome. So I created Skelly at the position of Skelly 2. Let's make this a little bit more interesting and have this create Skelly again. Right now, I can't interact with it because it is not a type of object. It is just it's no type, so there's no object collision with it. That's kind of what I want. Again, I'm getting that dry bones vibe, right? That's exactly what I was going for. I'm gonna close that out. Come back over here, and I'm going to go back to my graphics. So I'm going to come into my pixel editor, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a second frame for this animation. Basically, that's just 1 pixel higher. Oops. Well, that was a weird shortcut. Control C, and oh no, that's not going to work because I need it. I don't want to move over. I want it higher than that. It's a little tricky. I wish I could just move it. Nope, a little higher. Come on, get up there. There we go. And I'm gonna make his eyes big again. You can see he's coming back to life, and he's gonna shake back and forth between those two states. So um, I'll even make his eyes glow bigger, so you know he's about to come alive. Like he's ready. He's gonna go back and forth between these two. He's gonna shake a little bit, and then he'll turn back into this guy. I'm gonna save that. And what I need to do is go over to my skull, and I'm gonna add a new animation. So this is going to be still, and I'm going to add waking, and I'm going to go to my waking, choose this last sub palette, and I'll make it go 2 frames. And the second animation frame, I'll make it look like this, and this will kind of look like this. So we'll get the vibe that he's about to wake up because he's doing that nonsense. Um, then what I need to do is I need to go manage. I need to go to object details, rename this one to still, add waking, and I'm going to change this to waking. And now I can go to my actions, and I can say when he shows up on the screen, he's still, and then I'll give it a long timer. And when that timer's done, end the action, advance, and this is going to have waking as its animation. And I'm not going to tell it what to do right now. It's just going to change to waking. I don't know what else it can do. I don't currently have an action to destroy itself and creates a behavior that destroys itself and creates the skelly that we want to create. So we're gonna have to build that action. That's another piece of code that we're gonna write. But for right now, I should be able to see it change into the sort of damping skull for a second. Let's check that out and hit close. We're getting pretty close. So I step on him, and all of a sudden he's gonna come in. You can do it. There he goes. Okay. So he did do it, but first of all, I think that's probably a good time for an actual game. It's a horrible time for a test. So let's turn that timer down. And the only problem is, yes, he did actually change. But he had no animation speed. Let's make sure that he's got a fast animation speed. Let's put it on 2 and see if that's fast enough. All right. So I turned down the timer a little bit so it happens a little bit quicker. And I turned up the animation speed. And this will make him a lot more interesting. And now all of a sudden he comes back alive. Okay, now what I need is I need a timer. When that timer goes off, he's going to destroy himself and recreate the skeleton in his position. So it's kind of going to be a AI behavior that's very reminiscent of this right here. right? This is how I created a skeleton in its face. But now I'm going to create a skelly two in the place of the skull. I create a skull in the place of the skeleton. Now I'm going to create a skeleton in the place of the skull. I'm not going to do the hop. I don't have to worry about player hurt. I don't have to worry about checking the vulnerability. But this code is pretty much the same. Couple differences, but let's remember this part got the X and Y of the object I was talking about, create destroyed the object I was talking about, and then created something in that spot. That's the important part. So let's go into a new behavior script. So I'll go into my script settings. I will go into my AI behaviors. Remember what I said. Instead of clicking on a blank one and hitting edit, I'm going to go to uh, one that already exists and hit edit, and then go to File New. And I'm just going to give this name, create full Skelly 2. Control S. It is not an assembly language source file right now, so I need to make sure I change it to an assembly language source file. Look, there's my other assembly language source files. Awesome. How about this? Create skeleton. All right. So save that. So now I've got one called create skeleton. If you don't remember where it is, make sure you know. Base 4.5 game AI script create skeleton. Got it? Okay. Now, what we know right now is that the skull object, when this gets called, is the object that's calling this AI behavior. So it is what is in Xavier. Xavier is holding the value of the skull. So I can load object underscore x underscore high comma Xavier and store it to temp A. I can load object x high or y high, sorry, y high comma Xavier and store it to temp B. So now I've got the position of this object that I'm about to mess with. But you know what I can't do? I can't create a new object right now without saving Xavier and then restoring it because I'm going to corrupt Xavier as soon as I create a new object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to destroy object like we did over here. Like we did over here. I destroyed the object. But now what I can do that I've destroyed it is I can say TXA, THA, TLA, TNS. This is the thing that took Xavier and put it on the stack, pulled it from the stack, put it back into Xavier. Now I can corrupt X all that I want right here, and I'm not worried about Xavier. Right. So I'm going to say create object temp A, well, temp B, because that's the position we got right here. Now, what object do I want to create? I could say 20. I think it's still 20, but instead, I'm going to just use this right here. I'm going to put a hashtag. I keep doing that. Hashtag. And then what frame do I want it to show? What action step? 0. So now it's going to create whatever I have here. So if I change this number, it's going to create a different object here. I don't have to try and find all the spaces where I reference it. Hopefully that's starting to make a little bit of sense. I wanted to do something fun. I could make the new skeleton like pop out of the, like he literally hops. And I know I can do that. Let's make sure this works first, and then let's give him a little hop. I'm going to save this script right now. Create skeleton. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this new behavior, this AI behavior is the next blank one to object skeleton. Remember, I put it in the same place. So it's in base 4.5 game AI scripts. And what I should see is create skeleton right there. And I can go into my project labels. I can go into function types. I can call this one free skeleton, just like we did before. Same stuff. I just changed the label that I've set. But now over here in my object, I can set that timer. So after that timer goes off, it goes to waking, sets a shorter timer, advances. And when that advances, now it does the create skeleton, which is going to destroy itself. It's going to go away immediately. We don't have to set it to go to next or go to first or whatever, because then this object's going to be gone and it will have created Jelly 2. So I'm going to hit close. I'm going to try this out. Hopefully I've coded that okay. Let's see. Oops, come here. Sorry, my emulator was out of focus there. So if I jump on him, Make a dry bones, flash your eyes, and then pop back up. Awesome. I think I am going to do that one thing that I said I was going to do. Walk through him. He doesn't hurt me until he pops back up, just like a dry bones. Awesome. I think the one thing that I'm going to do is I am going to make him hop up. I just think that that would just be hilarious looking if he just like kind of hops out of the ground. Well, guess what? I already have a script open that's got a hop in it. Like if I look at my player right here, this right here made my player hop, right? I'm gonna copy that. This is just the player script that made my player hop if I jumped on top of his head. I'm gonna come over here. Well, if we know that right now Xavier is holding this new object that I'm creating, I'm just gonna make Xavier's speed vertical speed to 100. So because Xavier is loaded right here, that's why we had to do this and this to save and restore what was in Xavier. Now that's an Xavier. This doesn't make my player hop anymore. This is making this object. This object's an Xavier. So I'm setting a negative value to that object's Xavier, a vertical speed. That's an Xavier. So now he'll have this nice little fun sort of leap out of his skull. Let's see from here. Give me a dry bones. Let's see how that looks. Whee! And that's super gratifying. Like that's a super fun little thing. We could get into the weeds a little bit more. Like maybe I make it face left and right, depending on, I give them a couple different animations for one for still left, one for still right, one for waking left, one for waking right. I set that to directions. You should be able to figure that out from the other object tutorials that we did. I don't really care though. I think it looks fine if there's just one direction and just no matter what, he's always sort of uh, uh, his skull's always the same sort of graphic facing the same way. I don't. It sells it fine for me. So anyway, I hope that this was exhilarating, fun, not nearly as terrifying as you might have expected. I can't wait to see what you guys start to do now that you're exploring the code a little bit, and hopefully it gets your brains starting to wander a little bit as far as things that you can do that might be unique and different and cool. I will catch you guys all tomorrow.